Uh, okay, class. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. This is our third lecture in this class of thinking. I had the first lecture or topic one. It has always all been posted to the learning management system, which I sent the link for. It's called cctinc.elearning. Lecture, video lecture A, B1, 2, 3, or I think 1A, 1B, 1C, whatever. There are 3 lectures there. And I am posting today, inshallah, the second lecture, which was about the Hegel and the Marx models. They will be uploaded system. And today, actually this afternoon in my time and morning in your time, wherever you might be, I know there are some brothers or sisters who have, it's already night time, their time. So we have the entire spectrum. But today, Brother Samir from University of Dallas is one of my brothers and friends, and very well versed in the issue of thinking. He will be conducting the class on my behalf because I have to leave probably somewhere in the middle of the time, so I don't want to interrupt myself. So you are in good hands, and inshallah Samir will take good care of us, and we will record this lecture and upload it as we do it for the previous one. Okay, the floor is all yours, Brother Samir. You are the co-host, you can manage. I allowed people to join without having to admit them. Everybody is admitted by default. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Inshallah.
Go ahead.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters.
Wa alaikum assalam, Brother Sami. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu wa rahmatullah. I also want to, as in the beginning, to apologize in case I got cut off. I'm currently not in the US, but I'm actually currently traveling in Lebanon. And we have major issues here with the internet and the electricity. So if we get cut off, hopefully we can get back on. Inshallah, I want to start the talk, and let me tell you that if you have any questions or during the talk, just stop me and ask. I would like to have this. Actually, I will ask some question to you, and hopefully you guys can answer it because we're thinking together here today. But I want to start with the introduction of a statement which says that al-insan, mankind or human being, is the best of creatures that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have created. And this statement has been made by some of the scholars and some of the thinkers and philosophers, Muslims and so on, based on quite a few things. Some of them is the ayat from Allah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Okay, we have honored the sons of Adam. And then he continues, وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِمَّا خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. And we have bestowed that they are more, فَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا, meaning that we have raised their status above many of whom we have created. And that's in Surah Al-Isra. And then there is in Surah Al-Tin, Allah says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. We have created the human being in the best of status. And then it goes further. It says, says that, but then the human being takes himself down, okay, except the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, except the who believe. So that means if the disbelievers, they can take themselves down, what did they do? They actually just disbelieved. So what is the difference between then the person who Allah honored and raised and the person who's actually in the other side? This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالتِّينُ وَالزَّيْتُونُ وَطُورِ سِينٍ وَهَذَا الْبَلْدِ الْأَمِينِ لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. Then he has went down and degraded himself to the lowest of beings. Okay, he degraded himself. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات, except for those who actually believed وعملوا الصالحات. That means they did the thinking process, they did the belief, because belief is a thinking process, a final judgment. وعملوا الصالحات, and they behaved according to their belief. So there was a thinking process, and there is a result of that thinking. There was a judgment of belief. There was this, and then they behaved accordingly. By that, they raised their status. That means what raised the human being from the rest of these creatures is its ability to think, its ability to judge, and its ability to take actions based on their ideological status. So, al-aql, thinking, okay, a tafkir, or thinking process, the way we think, how we think, is extremely significant and on the judgment of what we are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and either being a raised human or someone who's who have been bestowed the favor upon, or someone who's actually in the lowest of beings, if we close that thinking process. So this is my intro point, is that this is what makes us as a human being different, because what makes us different from animals is that we think. Because otherwise, we are materialistic thing. We have a brain. Actually, animals have a brain. We have bodies. We have cells. Animals have cells. We have life, plants, and so this is a very important characteristics. And that the mind, when we talk about thinking of mind, and there is the mind, thinking gave us many things, from a simple activity to a very complex. So I'm just trying to reintroduce. I know Dr. Malkawi have probably went through this, but I just wanted to reach to a point by saying the impact of thinking. There was complex things like science. By thinking, we produce science, we produce philosophy and logic, we produce literatures and books, we produce linguistics, we produce knowledge by thinking, we produce fiqh, math, engineering. So you can see that thinking can take you from a simple, this is an apple that I can eat, or thinking can take you where you create a rocket that takes you out to space. Thinking can be a simple thing that this is hot or cold, or thinking can be as complex as a nuclear reactor. Right? So there is multiple levels, but thinking is thinking at the end. Okay, that's what I wanted to do. So my questions, because today I knew that you guys have talked about that humanity and Muslims and non-Muslims have tried defining thinking and the mind, and you guys, I believe, went through how those philosophers and even the closest that to the right definition or understanding of the mind and thinking was the way the communists try to do that. But I just wanted to bypass that, because I would leave that to Dr. Malkawi to go back to and connect. But I wanted to now ask you the question. Okay, if you guys don't mind, I want to ask the question and then you let me. When you say the word think or ufakir or thinking, okay, what does that actually mean to you? I mean, you can jump. I don't have to ask any specific one, any specific. Can any of you unmute yourself or something? When you say thinking in your mind, what first thing comes to your mind? What happens?
Hi, brother. This is Maruf. Well, in generally, when we think of thinking, it comes like something stored like as a information, and based on that, we kind of think like whatever the subject matter is, like we relate the information with that subject matter, and then our brain functions, and then based on our concept or anything, we act or react to that. That's
anybody else? Yeah. I mean, that's true. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what you say, but I want to see what else comes to mind. Anyone else wants to just put a statement in there? We'll discuss all these points.
Sure.
Good, brothers. Yeah.
So it actually engages the thought process. Is something like you have something that can comprehend that reality and link it with the previous information that's already stored in your mind, and the linkage of that reality, whatever the senses you use to acknowledge that reality, and the linkage of the previous information that's already stored. This is what the thinking process is.
Okay. I can see that you guys are trying to define thinking, but my question is even a lot simpler. I say, like, when you jump into thinking, why do you think? Why, like, what is the purpose for a thinking?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. We think because we want to understand something, or form a judgment about whatever we are trying to think about.
Okay. So
to solve a problem.
So for example, can you give me a simple example of thinking? A simple, I mean, don't give me a complex one.
Like for example, when you ask the question, what do you first think of? What comes to your mind when you, when you're asked to think, or what do you mean by thinking? I mean, that itself is something to think about.
Mm-hmm. A simpler one. That's a little bit more complex.
Okay.
Can you think of a simpler? I mean, every day we do this every second.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
we think continuously. Okay.
For example, if you wake up in the morning and you look outside the window or outside the door and see if it's bright or still dark, to think about whether it's day or night or still early in the morning.
Right. Yes. Absolutely. Okay. So you simplified it. No. So another example of I think a process of thinking. A simple one. That's right. What you said is right.
Another example would be, I mean, you look at an object, say for example your cell phone, your mobile phone, you look at it and you think about it. Okay, how did this, how was this made? How does this small phone, hold this much information? I mean, these are the things that you use in day-to-day life. So, for example, if not phone is a complex object, then you can say a book. You can look at the book and you can say, okay, this is a collection of pages. How was it bound?
Yes.
How was it binded? Who decided to cut this page, these pages in this size and this shape? So just think about it.
Can I say simplify further? Like when you said when you wake up in the morning and you look at the window and say, is it dark or day? Is it night or morning? Is it possibly 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock? When I wake up in the morning, do I eat cereal or an apple? Or didn't we think, that should I drink tea with the sugar, or should I have a black coffee? Isn't that like a thinking? Isn't it?
I mean, not necessarily thinking, because sometimes you do things without thinking as well.
No, that is not. See, that's where you don't do things without thinking. It's just because thinking, it doesn't mean it's a complex, long process. Okay.
No, you do things subconsciously. For example, you wake up and you brush your teeth. You do it subconsciously. You're not actively thinking about it.
But you already, you pre-thought it, You say, okay, this is what I do every morning. I do this because why do you brush your teeth? Because I want to make sure that my teeth are clean and healthy. Okay, it's already, you made that. But if you say, should I eat this apple or not eat it? Okay, is that a thinking process?
Yes, you're actually looking at the apple and saying, okay, whether I should, you're actually forming a judgment about it. So yes, that is a thinking.
Yes. Okay. So now, okay. So you say you use the ring word, okay, or the bill word. You said you made a judgment about eating the apple or not, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the purpose of thinking is to do what?
Is to establish a judgment about
Yes.
something that exists and that you have access to.
Irrespective to how complex that judgment or this. Thinking,
Yes.
okay, thinking is finally, okay, the purpose, we think to what you guys mentioned the word, to understand a reality or to this, it's finally to make a judgment on something, right? Irrespective of what that judgment is, right? And I'm not gonna go complex, but can I eat this apple or not? Should I eat it or not? Or do I clean or not? Or do I do this or not? Is it night or daytime? Is it time to wake up or still night I need to sleep? It's all, these are very, very simple. I said simplify so we understand. I mean, the whole goal is that we want to understand what thinking is, right? We're gonna go deep in trying to understand what is thinking, but to understand that, you need to understand the simplest process of thinking, and then it doesn't matter how complex it is, the judgment. So we can try to understand communism and how it is wrong, and we can dig deep into the idea of communism and socialism and capitalism. That is a very complex thought process. That's ideological thinking. Okay, that's a huge amount of mental processes that you do to come up with that judgment. But to eat an apple or not, you say, I don't like apples, so I'm not going to eat an apple. That's a very fast, and that's why you say subconscious. You already prejudge things, so you have immediate, consequences on it. So we don't even think of these processes as thinking because it's became already a routine. We do it in the milliseconds time, and we don't even think that we are thinking. Right? I mean, it's like, no, but this is we do subconsciously. Yes, but that is a thinking process. Yet you did, but it happens so fast and it becomes a routine to you, but it's always a judgment. Okay, what we are asking for is to understand the process that happens, irrespective how fast it is. So if I'm an investigator, okay, and I need to understand an accident that happened, someone who killed someone, I found a dead body on the streets, and I'm the investigator, I'm the police department, I have to dig and do activities. It's a lot of thinking so I can reach to my judgment about who killed this person? Was this person killed, or did he kill himself? Or, who killed him? Is there a purpose for killing him? That's lots of thinking, very high level thinking. But day to day, I do thinking every day, but the process of thinking is the same.
So Sheikh, I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
I have a quick question. So you said, for example, when you wake up in the morning, you have already decided that that you either want to eat cereal or whatever you want to eat. That's a process that you've already done so many times that you don't even have to actively think about it. So sometimes you don't feel like doing the routine work that you're doing. So why does that happen? For example, you don't feel like
what? I'm sorry.
You don't feel like, for example, if you eat cereal every morning, there are some days where you don't feel like eating. So why does that happen?
Oh, that's,
I'm
again,
not sure if it's relevant
it's
to
a
this.
judgment that happens because there is other drives. And now we will understand. Okay, yes. Now, I was trying to tell you that there is a process for thinking, okay, that we're going to understand. And then what drives that process, okay, what makes you make the judgment, okay, about, today I don't feel eating cereal, okay? I'm going to change my habit, not eating cereal. I'm going to eat like an apple a day. Today, I just decided that. And okay, now each activity that you do, even how small it is or big, it's a thinking process, okay? And then how fast you do it and how easy and how difficult, that's a different scenario. So we're not talking about how complex, how deep, how enlightened your judgment is or your thinking process is. We're talking that there is a process that took place. It could be as simple as the cup of tea is hot, don't touch it. Or be careful, your coffee can burn you, okay, because the cup is hot. Okay? It's thinking, it's all thinking. It's just that it is a simple thinking versus a complex thinking, but thinking is thinking. Because you either are judging that this water in this cup is hot, okay, or you're thinking who killed this. It's all thinking. It's just that there is a simple and a complex, but the process is the same. Okay, something comes very fast, and something needs a deep, pondering upon, and we will dissect the process. Okay, give me in a few seconds, a few minutes, we'll dissect the process. But the point is that thinking has an objective, which is I want to make a judgment. I want to understand. Even when you say I want to understand, why do you want to understand? Because you want to make a judgment, because you want to behave accordingly. Say, when the ayah says, okay, who believed and did the good deeds. So you think, you judge, and you want to behave accordingly, because thinking finally directs your behavior, right?
Yes.
What we thought, we said thinking directs behavior. I want to direct my behavior, so I need to think. And my thinking, now the point is that, okay, so how does this thinking happen? That's where we are here at the moment. Okay, I want to first understand the thinking process. Now, the problem that Dr. Malkawi has mentioned to you guys before is that when people start thinking about thinking, they went the direction went array, because they said, the mind, al-aql, or thinking, is that in the heart or is that in the brain? Is that they start thinking about what is it? And instead of understanding it, they start trying to define the mind as an entity, as a thing. While when I mentioned to you, I said, when you think, when I say what is thinking, when you say thinking about something, what comes to your mind? You immediately start saying, I try to understand. I said, why? I say, because I want to make a judgment. Then, so what happens during thinking? You say, okay, there is something that happens that comes up with that judgment. Okay. So it is, it's not a thing, it's a process. Okay. So you keep telling me about I keep saying, the process of thinking, process. Why am I saying this word? Because thinking is not a thing. It's not a matter. It's not the brain, even though it happens in the brain. Okay. It's, the brain is something that is essential. This is where we come to, now we will start to do, but I do thinking. That means when you say I do thinking, I perform this process of thinking so I can understand and judge. Then thinking is a process, right? That's our first hunch here, right? Are we clear, guys?
Yes.
Okay, so now we have to understand if thinking is a process, so what really happens? So I said, let's take a simple thinking, okay, and a judgment, and then dissect it. So I'm going to say this, and I'll take an example of visual, this is an apple, okay? That's a judgment, very fast judgment, right? Okay, I see it every day because there's, okay, and this apple is red, for example, or green. That's a judgment. Now, let's take that example and dissect it. Okay. So to say that this is a red apple, what happened here? Can somebody tell me what happened to make that judgment? Or the other example that one of you guys mentioned is I woke up and I thought, it's still dark out there. It's still night. That's a judgment, right? So what happened here?
So you process the information that you learned. Okay, you know what day is and what night is, or what differentiates between a day and night. You have that knowledge that, okay, when it's dark, it's called night, and when it's bright, outside, it's the day. So you look at it and that's how you establish a judgment based on the knowledge that you have.
Okay. Okay, then let me take the example. I want to just take the example of this is a red apple. Okay, I just want to do this. Okay, or an eatable, fruits or something. Red apple. Okay, to make that judgment, can you tell me what did I have to make that judgment?
You first need to have the apple.
Okay, so step number one: if there is an apple, if there was no apple, can I make that judgment?
No, you cannot.
Okay, so if I then if they to think, for me as a human being to think, I need to have a material thing in front of me. Okay, to think about and to judge. If there is nothing to think about and judge, then I cannot think, right? Because if there is no apple, then I cannot think of the apple if it's red or green. Say, can you think? Okay,
unless you've seen the apple before.
Yeah.
Unless you've seen the apple before,
and
then you can make a judgment that there's red apples.
No, okay. So I know I'm saying about if there is no apple in front of me, can I judge what kind of apple is there?
No.
You go to the market and there is no apple. Can you do it? No, you cannot. So if there is no apples, you cannot think of that apple. I'm not thinking now. I'm not telling you about. Can you tell me what kind of apples exist in the world? Then you recall some of the information. Say there is red apples, yellow apples, green apples, Gran Smith apple, Washington apples, and so on. But I'm telling you what's on the table.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. What's in this table in front of you? And there is no apple. And you say there is an apple. I say, like, hold on, guys. There's no apple there. You say, no, I'm imagining an apple in there. Well, yes, you can imagine. But imagination, okay, the mind has the capacity and the ability to imagine. I'm talking about thinking, not imagining. So when we say we think, to judge, you say, is this apple? You can say someone, is this apple a tasty apple? And he says, what apple? You say, okay. He's like, there's no apple here. Okay. And he say, no, this apple. And I say, there is no apple in the front of me to be able to tell you, is it like red or green or this? Oh, okay. I say, no, I say, you tell him you are imagining an apple. The table doesn't have apple. It has grapes and bananas. Right? Okay. So if he says, well, no, but I can imagine an apple. I say, okay, you can imagine it, but then I cannot judge it. Because what's in your imagination is not something that I can judge or think of. I can imagine like you and give you my imagination of that if it's a green apple, it would be tarty sweet or this and that. But that's imagination. That's not thinking. That's not realistic. So for a human being to judge something, you have to have something to judge, right? Otherwise, you cannot judge.
Yes.
True or not? So there is one factor that is absolutely needed, which is something to think about. If there's nothing materialistic to think about, then that's something you cannot really do. Now, we have the apple. Let's say we have the apple in front of us on the table, okay? And I tell you, can you tell me if this apple is red, green, or yellow? And if you tell me if this apple is complete or cut in half, what do you have to do? How do you judge it? What do you do to know?
You look at the apple. You're actually you're obviously looking at the apple, so you would know whether it's complete or it's cut.
Okay, so by looking at the apple, for example, you can see it's red or yellow or green, right? So your judgment of the apple, okay, through visual. So you have to sense it with your eye at the moment, okay? Let's say, and if let's say you were blinded by something, you can touch it. You can say, this is a whole apple or cut apple, like it's cut in half or cut in pieces. You can judge it through sensing. But then the point is that you need to, to sense the item that you are addressing, the reality that you're addressing, and transmit those to your brain, right?
Sorry.
So what do you need here? What do you need here then, other than the item itself?
Senses.
Yeah, sensory transmission. So if you, let's say, I mean, ask this question. If you don't have any sensing, like you don't have, you're blind and you cannot hear and you cannot touch, you have like something that prevents you from all that, irrespective that you are, physical prevention and so on. Can you make that judgment? If I have you in the other room and then put an apple in the second room and say, can you tell me what kind of apple I have in the other room?
I mean, that reality is not existing.
Can you give me a judgment?
That material object is not
Right.
even existing in front of you, so you cannot make a judgment.
Okay, so because it's not because there is no apple in the other room. There is an apple in the other room.
No, but it is not in front of you.
You cannot sense it, right?
Yeah.
You cannot transmit that item to your brain to say what kind of apple is it, tart, is sweet, it's green, it's red, or something, right? Okay, so we don't have that. So transmission of sensing is not possible. Then you cannot make a judgment. You can make a guessing. I can tell them, hey, listen, what? There's 3 types of apple I know that exists in this town. It could be green, it could be this, it could be that. I can make that guessing game. But is that a thinking? Do we consider that thinking? I mean, in normal life.
Can you repeat the question once again?
Okay, if I told you like, okay, I have an apple in the other side. Okay, so I told you there is an apple. Okay, can you tell me what kind of apple is that?
No, I cannot.
But
you cannot. But if I tell you but if you said, I want to guess on it.
I mean, you need to know. You need to know what an apple looks like. You need to know. I mean, if you're asking about the color, you need to know that apple comes in different colors. So without having that knowledge, you cannot say
this.
You cannot make a guess.
Right. Yeah.
But I think that
no, at least we're talking about currently the second piece. I'm sorry, brother. You cut off. I didn't hear what the last statement that was mentioned.
I said, like this guessing thing, like you are guessing whatever it is there in the next room.
Right. Okay. For some reason, brother, like your network is not coming through. But let me if I get you correctly, yes, you can guess, but you cannot really make thinking process. Okay, so it's a guessing issue because you cannot sense it. So what the point in here that I'm trying to make, there's 2 things that are necessary. You need to have the actual material that is in front of you to judge it. You have to be able to sense it, okay, and transmit that sense to where you then it's transmitted to your brain. Then you need to have we call this way in this process in the brain, you need to have a valid brain, because if you have a brain but like you have a hormonal defect in that brain that cannot keep this information or this sensing transmitting, like someone who's crazy or have genetic defects in their brain, can they still think? So can someone think without a brain?
No.
No, Sheikh.
Okay. So we have now 3 items are necessary for thinking process, right? We have the item itself has to exist. You have to be able to sense that item with any of your senses to make that judgment that is particular to that sensing. So if it's color, you need to see it. If it's hot or cold, you need to feel it. Okay, if it's sweet or this, you need to taste it or smell it. So you need to make the judgment. You need to be able to sense with the proper sensing process to make that judgment. And then there is one more piece. That sensation, has to go back to your brain, who's capable of connecting things with what you already mentioned a couple of things that like, oh, you need to know some previous information. We'll address that in do, but then you have a valid brain that can take those sensations, connect them with each other, and then the mind basically comes up with a judgment. Now, when we say connect them, connect with what? Okay, so if there's, now we say there's 3 items, and the last one is the ability to connect with whatever previous information we have about this item. Okay, that is the last piece of the process. Okay, so a thinking process, if I say this is a red apple, I had to have an apple. I have to visualize it, see it, basically, through my sensing, through my eyes, because it's, the question was, is this red or green? Then I have to see it. So that is what I do. If it was sweet or tart, then I have to taste it. All right, so I have to move that, and then that sensation goes to the brain and says, okay, the brain says, this is what sweet in my mind says. This is what the red color to me means. This is because this is what a green in my set information as what is a green and what is red and what is tart and what is sweet. Those are all preset information in my brain. And then when the sensation comes from the reality comes to the brain, then the brain says, okay, what you saw there or what you tasted or what you smelled, oh, in my database, and now we talk now engineering, in my database in the brain connects with my database as, oh, this is red, because I already have a predefined thing about what red is and what green is and what a sweet is and what is tart is and what is sour is and what is bitter is. It's all, if I eat sugar, this is what sweet is. If I eat something sour, this is what sour is. So I connect that, right?
Right, Sheikh.
Are we clear until this point? Okay, so now, what is the last piece of the thinking process? I remember we said, what do we think for? We want to make a judgment, right?
To make a judgment?
Yes. So, okay. So what the brain does, or what you guys do in there, is that we have to have something to think about, reality that we sense. And then this sensation comes to the brain connects it with the previous information, and there we put it all together and come up with a judgment about it. It's red, it's sweet, it's tart, is this. Okay, now this is a simple thought process that is regarding very materialistic process. That means you can see that I'm talking about red, taste, sour, tasty, sweet. It's a very materialistic, very simplistic thought, right? Now, if we want to make a judgment about, is this good or bad? Right? Like you've seen someone kill someone. Okay? Is this good or bad? That's a judgment, right? Or to fight, not to fight. Or you're hungry, you pass by, okay, a garden, and out of this garden, the fruits are coming out. Do you eat that fruit or not? Do you take your hand, pull the fruit from the tree or not? How do you process that? How do you behave, and how do you judge that? You are in the market, supermarket. You're walking through the aisle. Do you pick up the apple and eat it before you go out of the store or not?
Not.
Why? Why did you make that judgment?
Because you have to pay for it.
Why do you have to pay for it?
Because that's the rule when you go into shopping, you pay for your shopping.
Okay. It's either that. So you made a judgment about your behavior, about this, that I shouldn't, okay, irrespective to why, I must not, okay, eat the fruit before I pay for it. Now, what drives you to do that, like for that judgment, okay? It could be because the law says so, because the policeman can jail me and put me in prison if I do that, or because it's considered shoplifting and that's a bad thing, or it's Allah says it's haram and I might be held responsible for the judgment, or right? But there was a thought process. You saw the apple, it's in the aisle. You said, okay, this apple does not belong to me and I cannot eat it before it belongs to me. And before it belongs to me, I have to buy it by my own money. Because if I take it without my own money, that is considered what? Stealing. And stealing is bad. I don't want to say haram too, this because or haram, or it's unprofessional behavior, or irrespective to what drove my final point. But there was a thinking process. That means, here is the apple. I thought that this apple does not belong to me because I don't own it. It belongs to the shop owner. Even though it's in front of me, it's in my reach. Okay? But I will not touch it. Okay? Because it's considered haram. Because there is a judgment already. It's the way you are judging that this item, now this is a complex, complex thought process here, because you're connecting your judgment to your ideological beliefs. But the reality is that there is an apple, and again, that apple is eatable, but you won't eat it. Okay, why I won't eat it? You're sensing that it is an apple and it's eatable, because you're saying, oh, that your brain is connected, saying this apple does not belong to you, and if it doesn't belong to you, okay, it's haram to eat. They already have the information is there. So this apple is not eatable, even though you could be hungry, and your stomach is saying, eat it, eat it, eat it, eat it, because the stomach is what? It's instinctive drive. You're hungry, your stomach says, go eat, right? You're thirsty, it tells you, your instinct says, go drink. But now, should I drink water, alcohol, milk? Okay, water that belongs to me, water that doesn't belong to me, alcohol that belongs to me, or alcohol doesn't belong to me, or whatever. See, can you guys see where this heads? It's now every time, every step, your thinking is happening, your basic thinking is happening. But where is the complexity happens is that when you start connecting in that brain with what previous information about that reality. What is the previous information we're addressing here? The previous information is about this specific item that you're thinking of, right? Are you guys with me or not?
Can you say that once again, Chef?
Okay. What we're saying is that you developed your thinking process, right? Based on that judgment of can I eat that apple on the aisle in the store? You said no, because it doesn't belong to me, and what doesn't belong to me is haram. Now, where is that came from in the process of thinking?
So it doesn't belong to you, so
previous information
is the information about the reality.
Right. Okay. So that's the last piece, is that there is a previous information that was built into your brain because of somebody told you okay, let me put it this way. Somebody told you it's haram to eat. Eating something that doesn't belong to you is haram and punishable by law or by Allah or whatever the case is. So there is a previous information in your brain, okay, set there. What your initial judgment, basically you are passing in the store, you see an apple, your instinct says, that looks good, okay? You are hungry, grab an apple. Your brain says, okay, now do I grab it or not? Before I grab it, I say, okay, let me think about it. Does this belong to me? No. How do I obtain the right to it? Oh, I have to buy it. Okay. If I don't buy it, what happens? Oh, I could be punished by law or by Allah. So what do I do here? Okay, then your brain says, okay, you're connecting all this information. It's a very, but believe me guys, I'm telling you all this in steps, but it's a very fast thing that happens in your brain every multi-second, okay? But it's happening there. All that connection is happening. So you have the reality, you feel it, you know that, and then you connect with your brain, and then there is a previous information about your, like, the item or about the reality that you're dealing with. Okay, so it's an item or reality. So you could judge, is like, remember I gave you an example of an item like a red apple or green apple or a sour apple or this, but the you don't think only about items. You can think about something that is not materialistic, which is, I said, something that is moral. Is this moral or not? Is this okay to do or not? That is not the material itself. So you're thinking about stealing or owning. All that is a thinking process. Now you have. So what is stealing? You say the stealing is taking something that you don't own. Okay, stealing is okay. Okay, now here is the question: is stealing okay? You say, oh, the act of stealing, which is taking something that doesn't belong to you. Okay, you have to ask that in do. So you go back to your previous information about stealing. Is stealing okay or not? Because then you say, if you are a capitalist, you say that, well, if you're not caught by law, then everything is okay. If you can cheat people out of their money by, by selling them things that you don't own or this, you're okay. Okay. So there is a prior information about that reality that made you make your judgment. Again, you thought, you made a judgment. How did you make your judgment? You looked at the reality, you sensed it, you took it to your brain, you connected with the previous information, and then you made your judgment, right? Did I lose you guys here?
Right, got it.
Okay, so what are the 4 necessary elements for thinking then? Process. Can you guys list them?
Reality.
I'm sorry, go ahead, one.
You need to have a material object to think about.
Okay, because if you don't have, let's say, take the item and then tell me if you don't have it, can you do a thinking process or not? Okay, so you have to have the item or reality to think about. Okay, this item or reality has to be what? The second piece, second element, has to be sensible, something you can sense, right? Okay, so you can, it's an item or reality that you can transmit through your sensory transmitting process. It's true, right? If you cannot sense it, that means you're touching, your skin is really burned up all the way and you cannot sense things through your fingers and your this. And if you have you're blind and you cannot see, or if you are deaf and you cannot hear, can you perform the activity necessary if that sensory process does not exist?
So is the information the first element of thinking? Like without the information,
Not
the
necessarily.
rest.
It does. No, not necessarily. Without any of those items, it's not necessarily the first or last. I mean, don't put those guys, put them into. Don't try to prioritize them, because, for example, the whole point is that, like, without any of them, the thinking process is disrupted. That's what I'm saying. It's a process. It starts with the reality itself, that it has to exist. So if you don't have a real object in front of you or a reality, you cannot think. Okay, if you cannot transmit the sensory of that item reality to your brain, you cannot think. If you don't have a proper brain that can connect all these transmitted sensory, you cannot produce a judgment, and you cannot think. If you don't have a previous information, then you cannot think. It's all connected. It's a process. It's, if you guys can, and we can send it to you, I can redo that, do a schematic diagram, right? Where it does. But think about it. If you have a reality, you have to have sensing of that reality. You have to have a brain that is valid, and then you have to have a previous information. If any of these doesn't exist, then your process of thinking doesn't happen.
So, Sheikh, the question is, when it comes to sensing, does it have to be all the 5 senses, or?
No, not necessarily. It depends on what you're thinking. So we're not saying that a blind person cannot think. No, you're saying that a blind person cannot judge something that needs the visual judgment, right? So a blind person cannot make a judgment on red or green by smelling, by touching, by this. You cannot. Then you just say he cannot make a judgment on the color. If you keep changing the whatever color in front of him, he's not going to make a judgment. He can't, right?
Yeah,
correct.
It depends on what kind of judgment you need. If it requires the visual sensing, then you need that. So a deaf person cannot judge a song. Like I say, how is this music sound? And it's like, he's deaf. Whatever you do is not going to make a judgment. Okay, but a deaf person can say that this is a red apple. He can say this is a sour, or sweet, or this. So it is not. It has nothing to do. But if you have none of these sensing at all, then you cannot make anything. Okay. Yes. So you need whatever needed sensory transmission that is needed for that judgment. It depends on the question. It depends on what you're trying to judge. If you're trying to judge something that is visual, then you need the visual sensing. If you need to to judge something that is you need the tasting, then you need your tasting buds to work. If somebody burned his tongue and he has no or somebody got guys with the corona virus, it hits your taste buds. So if somebody cannot, so like when these are, say people who got received the corona, so like you might lose your tasting buds. Okay, they say like you don't really know what you're eating. You just like feel materials in there and their thing. Can you say to them, what is this, salty or is this sweet? He can't tell. You're asking someone who doesn't have that sensing. You cannot tell, right? So he cannot judge it. You can only guess. Is that clear?
Yes, Sheikh.
Okay, so if you don't have the reality, if you don't have the sensing, or if you don't have the valid proper brain to connect the sensory transmission to you, because you might have the apple or you have the reality that you're trying to judge and you have all your sensing, but someone is out of his brain. He is drugged out, or is actually hormonally defective, so he cannot really think. Is like what people call crazy. Can they make a judgment, proper judgment? No, right? And now,
No.
if I give you all these three, but no prior information, let's say, okay, I give you a book with, possibly, old language that you have never seen before. Okay, and I tell you, what is this book is about? Can you judge it and say this is a science book or this is a literature book? You have all your sensory. You have the valid brain, and the book is there in front of you. Can you make a judgment? What is this book is all about?
No, just guessing.
Yeah, then why? Because the last piece of this thinking process, which is the previous information, you should have some information about previous languages, what they write, and then for you to understand this book. And then you can say, if you can read this language, then you can say, oh, this is about a book about science, or this is about philosophy, or this is about astronomy, or this about this. Otherwise, it's guessing. So for us to complete a thinking process, remember, they said we need to have 4 elements. Item of reality that we have to think about, that is sensible, that we can sense and transmit those sensing to your brain, which has a valid brain that can connect all these items together with what? Connect to the previous information. If we don't have any of those 4, we cannot make a thought. And now you can take this and apply it to anything. About fiqh thinking, about science thinking, about architectural thinking, about linguistic thinking. And you will see that it's the same process, irrespective how complex it is, the process is. If you don't have these 4 elements, you cannot make a thought, and you cannot make a judgment. You need those 4 basic elements. So it could be as simple as I said, this tea is hot or cold, or it could be as complex as, is there a creator, okay, to this universe? It's a thought process, same thing. Or what do I need to make this rocket go to the moon or to Mars? And how can I land it on Mars? Yeah. Different level of thinking. I say different level of thinking, but it's thinking. And you need to have the 4 elements. Okay. Are we clear, or did we get lost?
No, clear, Sheikh. All these elements are not necessarily has to be in sequence, right? It can be any of these elements can come before one.
Yeah, there's no, the sequencing is not necessarily.
Necessarily,
I mean, not
yes.
thinking,
Yeah.
but it's not. It's we're saying, when you say, let me say this, okay, thinking is a process. Okay, when you use that word, thinking is a process. And a process is sequential in general. Okay? Process is sequential. And so the issue is that when you do that, it's just it's a process. You don't really have to sit it into put it this way, so it is something that you do, okay, as a process. Now, the point what you mentioned about, like, which comes first, this is what, like, I know that Malkawi would be talking about, and he has been talking about with you guys about where the communists went wrong with this, is that when they realize that there is something about, like, thought and reality. Okay, this is, see, the question that you're asking is that which comes first? Is it, do I have to have the item first, or is it the thought first? Like, means the previous information first. Okay, that actually caused communists to go astray in there, because if they decided that, because that's what they're thinking, they said, okay, if we say that, which one preceded the other one? So they were thinking, okay, if we say that the previous information needs to be before the item exists, then who gave us the previous information? And there must be someone before or something before that reality. So they immediately assumed and came back and said, oh, no, reality preceded thought, and thought is a reflection of reality. So they just like, because their judgment about like the eternity of matter, okay, has to precede thought, because, so they went and said, they logically put it together. Okay, well, we have, to define thinking, to know what thinking is that they noticed that they needed the previous information. That means when you say previous information, that means that information came to you from something else. And they said, that actually negates the previous information is nothing but a reflection of matter on your brain. So they said, oh, we have the matter that reflects on the brain, and they used the word reflect, by the way. They didn't see, sensing. They said reflecting on the brain, and based on that reflection, thought comes about. So they almost got there, and they denied the previous information because they didn't want to admit that there is something before matter. Okay.
May I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
So guessing is not a thinking process, because when we try to guess something, we recall our knowledge also, even if we don't have information about this object.
Right. Guessing, imagination is a process of the brain. The brain can do multi things, can have, you can say like this person has a really good imagination, or this person can guess really well. Okay, but that's not a thinking process. That just is a process that the brain can do. Yes, we can guess. We can just say, guessing is a process where like this or that, let me take, A or B, just take one of them. It's a process we do in our brain. So our brain can do guessing, can do imagination, and can do thinking. So yes, it's 3 different processes.
Thank you.
So, Sheikh, the question is, so when we say we think to arrive at a judgment, then is there a condition for the judgment to be correct or wrong?
Yes. Okay. So now you asked the question is that, so if I make a judgment based on guessing, how correct am I in guessing? Remember, guessing is one of 2, or one of many, or many of 4, or something, whatever. Let's say if I take a 50-50 chance, for example.
Yeah, the probability could be 50%.
Yes. Okay. So, but we do guessing every day, right? Sometimes we do it naturally, and we do it, and it works. And we accept the responsibility if it's wrong when it's guessing. Okay. How about, if we, use our imagination to perform a design, is that wrong?
To perform a design?
Yeah. Use imagination. Just use, what they call imagination to design something, make a drawing, or make something. Is that wrong or right?
I mean, depends on the purpose, what you're designing and why you're designing.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that imagination and guessing is a process that we use. Okay, it's what we use it for. Now, if I say for your aqidah, would you want to guess or use imagination? If the outcome is it going to hell or heaven, Jannah or Nar, would you want to guess or use imagination, or would you want to use your rational thinking, the process of thinking?
Okay, that's
right? Okay.
You would
It depends
obviously
on what you.
use your rational thinking, yes.
Okay.
In case of
See,
Aqidah, but
yes.
I'm talking about in general sense, other than
Right.
Aqidah, if you
Right.
are to, come at a conclusion about something, so
right. You can come with a conclusion at different ways. For example, okay. So, and I'm just saying, not the right thing or wrong thing. Right or wrong on the process, it depends on the item that you're thinking about or what you're thinking for. Okay. So, in scientific thinking, or what we call, there is now the types of thinking. Remember, now we're talking about now different types of thinking. Okay. And to send a rocket to the moon, you could use mathematical logic. Okay. Is that good? Yes, it fits, it can do. And if there's a mistake, there is no problem. It's just the rocket will fall, will not succeed in going there, and it's not a major issue. So is it okay to use logical, mathematical thinking? Yes, it is good. Now, if the question is that, do I eat the apple on the store without buying it or not? Okay, what kind of thinking? I need to use Sharia thinking. Then I need to know if it's haram or halal. I need to know what Allah is saying about this. And that is, then there is ijtihadi thinking. Remember, I'm just giving you the yes.
So when you said, okay, to send the rocket in the space, you need to apply mathematical, mathematical logic, or
yes, yeah,
thinking.
Math and science, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you said, if it does not succeed, it can fall, and that's not a big deal. So how did you arrive at that conclusion?
No, I'm saying is that, like, what I was saying, like, for me, if I'm like someone who's doing research, that's what they call research and development. You take risks in certain aspects. Okay, you calculate your risk and say, is this okay or not? Okay, and then you calculate your risk, and then you take your judgment based on that risk. Okay, and I'm saying, but I mean, when I said, like, do you want to go into Jannah or Nar, hell or heaven? Okay, do you want to take a calculated risk, or do you want to be 100% sure?
I mean, even if you talk about risk, it's the guesswork. You're not actually, you do not have that realistic experience of it. So you're just making an educated guess, maybe, but it's still a guess.
Which one? And like, where do you make the guess? I did not get you. Where is that?
So, for example, when you're talking about science or research,
no,
in terms of
science thinking is not necessarily a guess. No, absolutely no. You can, in research and development, you use a tool called investigational science and investigation tool, and then it's not a guess. It's based on information. You build your information based on observation. Scientific thinking is a process. Again, it's different than rationale, but it is a process that you use tools, you observe, you make judgment based on that observation, and you do deduction. So again, what we were trying to address here, like in the beginning, is the basic thinking process.
Sheikh, but still, even if you deduce something, there is always a probability of the deduction being wrong.
Mistake. Right. Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely. Yes. Not every deduction is right. Not every deduction is right. And I said, like, not every deduction is right.
So when
yes, absolutely.
When there's a possibility of something going wrong, a judgment going wrong,
right? Yes.
Becomes a guess.
No, not necessarily. It's a guess. When there is a possibility of wrong, that's not a guess. That's like, okay. So there is, like, the word guessing. Okay. So it's when you make a judgment without any guessing, there is in the linguistically, people say educated guess, and there is a pure guess. Okay, so it's a process too. So you can be, let's say a mujtahid, for example. Okay, he makes his judgment on a hukum shari based on his best understanding of the evidences. Okay, best understanding, and he says, this is what my ijtihad of my thoughts based on this understanding, that this is the rule of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not a guess. That is, he's telling you, I'm like 90% sure. There is a possibility of not being sure, because If it's 100%, that's yaqeen. That is tawatur. That is like and that's very few in the human life. Yaqeen is very few in the human life. Okay, so but guessing is a different little game. No, guessing is that when you have no evidence towards one of the two. Okay, that's the guessing. Is that there is absolutely no heavy. You are not weighing one over the other. If you have evidences to show, general evidences to show that there is, it's 80-90% of the time this is the correct way, or this, that's not guessing. That is what they call educated guessing. That's a judgmental thing based on evidences, but that evidence is not 100% accurate. I mean, it's not always accurate. Actually, most of our decisions are not based on certainty. Most of human life is not based on certainty, and we accept it the way it is. It is acceptable. So don't think that what we said, that only in Aqidah, you try it as much as possible, but in Aqidah, you need certainty. So you cannot really play the, what they call like the 90 percentile or like most probable or probability. I mean, remember in math and so on, they address the probability concept, and most medicine, I'm in medicine, so most medicine is a probability thing. It's based on scientific evidences, which works, if it works more than 60% by the way of time, that's considered high probability in medicine. So when medication, when it works like more than 60-70% of the time, they consider that's a very high good probability of working. So they actually approve it. There is always a chance that you take that it could be wrong, but then again, it's risk management. The human mind accepts the fact that nothing is 100% for sure, except for one thing. What I said, in your aqidah, you don't accept Allah. Actually, in the Quran, told us not to accept dhann. Okay, he said, which is okay. That's not guessing. Dhann is not guessing, by the way. That is, dhann means that less than is just one thing less than certainty. That is dhann.
A question.
Mm-hmm.
So is it so in a way when you're thinking about these different thought processes, scientific and rational, is that kind of like in English we say like inductive versus deductive thinking, like the scientific?
Yeah, there's
method.
Yes, those are the methods. Yes, different methods of thinking. Now, we were trying in the beginning to define the thinking. Okay, so I want to I don't want to take you more than time, but so I want to do this. Is that I just want to, we will address the types of thinking, and actually, Dr. Malkawi has that coming up. Okay, so the main piece of what we wanted to make sure that we understand today is that thinking is a process, and it has 4 major elements to it, which is the reality that is sensible, that you can sense, the brain, and the previous information. Without any of these, the thinking process doesn't take place. Now, what kind of thinking process? There's, rational, scientific thinking, logical thinking. There is many others. But finally, those elements are needed for the thinking process. Okay. Now, thinking processes are many. Okay, and remember that our mind and our brain can do other than thinking. They can do imagination, guessing, but that's not thinking. Okay, those are processes that the brain does. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. Imagination is good in its location. Guessing is good in its location. Thinking is good in its location. Now, what kind of thinking, what level of thinking, what certainty of thinking, is this correct or non-correct? Because thinking is not about correct or not. When you think, that's a process. Now, based on your evidences, how certain it is, and so on, your judgment becomes. So your judgment can be correct, incorrect, can be accurate, certain, inaccurate, a little bit accurate, 90% accurate. All that comes up later on. The point is that you have the thinking process set correctly. You have to know that without any of these elements, and the reason why I want to, insist on this, okay, on the 4 elements, because for the philosophers, okay, they went into traps. when they start thinking about, philosophy, they start thinking about things that doesn't exist, then they fell to the traps. Then they use their, because it doesn't exist, they use their imagination. And when they use their imagination, then there was no thinking. And then the judgment was false because there was no thinking. It was just pure imagination. The communists, they denied the last piece of the puzzle, which is the previous information, which got them into the wrong ideology. Okay, so it's all what we're trying to assert in this, at least session of this time, short period of time. What is thinking? I would say thinking is a process to do what? To make a judgment. Okay. Now, the judgment correct or not, that's a different scenario, because I can think and reach the wrong judgment. Thinking does not guarantee that I reach the correct judgment. Are we clear? Thinking does not guarantee that I reach the correct judgment, because you can think and reach the wrong judgment. We're saying that you need to think and use thinking process, not imagination, not guessing. You need to use thinking. Thinking has multiple even levels and has multiple types. So you need to use the right thinking later on. We'll address this later on. You need to write the right thinking. So, for example, in linguistic thinking, you need to use linguistic, processes to do it. If not, if you don't, then you are the wrong spot. I'm not a poet, so I cannot create poetry, okay? And do so really, so when it comes to the right thing that you need to think and judge, you need to have the right tool to be used.
So, Sheikh, another quick question. So, how do you differentiate between imagination and proper thinking? Because imagination is, again, a product of your exposure to some kind of reality, and then you base your imagination on top of that.
Right.
So,
yes. Yeah.
That again, that means that your imagination is based off of a reality. So that becomes thinking too.
No, it's like, so you said, remember, you said imagination was based off a reality, but it's not a judgment of that reality. You're creating something else. All right.
Okay.
So, for example, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran the tree in Jahannam, okay, He described it. He said, "رؤوسها كطلع الشياطين." It's like this tree is in the middle of Jahannam. Now just try to imagine a tree in the middle of the fire in Jahannam, and Allah says, طلعها كأنه رؤوس الشياطين. It's like its branches as like the heads of shayateen. Now, do you know what shayateen is? Have you ever seen a shaitan?
I mean, a pictorial depiction from the movies, yes, but otherwise not.
Okay, that's imagination. Allah is trying to give you have you ever seen a tree in the middle of fire? No, but Allah is giving you something to picture in your head, and that's imagination. He's giving you, said, it's a tree, so you know what a tree is. A human being knows what a tree is, but it's branches. It looks like this. So whatever you imagine it, that all what he's saying is just ugly, fearful, this, that. So there is something Allah is trying to install. So imagination here is not a bad thing. Okay, it's off reality, right? You say, but do you really know what this tree is? No. We can imagine only. We can imagine only. But Allah told us to imagine. He said, imagine it. So, and I'm saying imagination is not wrong. It's wrong if you use it in the wrong spot. Guessing is not wrong, absolutely, if you use it, unless it's use it in the wrong location. Right? So the mind and our brain is capable of multi-processes: thinking, guessing, imagination, scientific thinking, linguistic thinking, fiqh thinking, many other things. So there is ways and different means. The only thing, what I'm saying, is that thinking as such, rational thinking, needs those 4 elements. If we are missing any of those, you can say, for example, if I tell you now, can you think about the angels? What can you tell me? Very fast. I don't want to prolong this, but just very fast. If you can tell me about anything about the angels, can you tell me?
Just imagination.
No. Just imagination or what Allah has told you. So you just repeat.
Yes.
Okay. But you cannot yourself think of them because it's a reality that you cannot sense. So what's real? Do the angel exist or the shayateen exist? Yes. But can we sense them, us as a human being? No. So we cannot judge them. We cannot think about them. We can only repeat what Allah told us about them. So that's not thinking.
I mean, we cannot even, if you think about it, our soul itself, we cannot think about it.
We cannot, we cannot initiate thinking about angels but they exist. They are a reality. Allah told us that they are a reality. But because they are outside our sensible transmitting capabilities, right? So we're missing one of the elements, which is they are a reality, but we cannot sense it. So we cannot think about them. So, but we believe in them.
Yeah.
And they are 100% to us, right?
Yes.
Their existence is 100%. Not because we thought about them, because we were told about them, okay, from a source. So the mind has what they call the acceptance. You can accept things if the source is correct. That's a different, topic, and we go this way. But as thinking process, if I told you, can you think about the angels? You say, absolutely not. Because I cannot sense them. That doesn't mean that they don't exist. It's just I cannot sense them. And I don't have any previous information except what Allah told me. So the only thing I can tell you about the angels is what Allah told me. So again, so you apply those to whatever a question that comes your way.
So quick question. You said every process has its place, right? So the thinking process is to arrive to a judgment on reality. So meaning that it's for action or a decision that has real life consequences.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. You think because you want to reach a judgment about something that impacts you in one way or another. There could be about something that is materialistic, or and thinking like non-materialistic, like honor, or when we say that this nation is progressed or really broken society, or this this thing makes Allah angry, or the mercy, it could be psychological, like spiritual. It will be, but it's a judgment about something that impacts you. You have to make that, and then you use this tool to think. Now, if you have the tools to think, it means if you have the 4 elements, you can make your judgment. Okay, guys. I mean, I think I don't want to. We're taking more of the time, but then hopefully we cleared at least this point. I know it's not something that is because it has tangling. I mean, this is a sequence of hopefully talks, and then are we clear about just this topic, that thinking is about a judgment? Okay, you think because you want to judge, you make a judgment. Thinking needs those 4 elements, okay? And if it's any of them is missing, there is no thinking. But that doesn't mean that the brain is not capable of other things like imagination or guessing. Now, what's right, what's wrong is different. Not, it's a different thing. All what we're addressing here is that the thinking process and what is considered thinking and what is not.
Sheikh, a question. As we know that there are different types of thinking, like now as we are talking now is about just the process of thinking, but when it comes down to rational thinking, it's not necessary that we need to have an object to think, like believing in our creator, it's a rational thought. So we don't see our creator as a object or anything, right? So.
Okay, I would leave this to the discussion in the future. But yes, there is at the moment. If I tell you, can you think of Allah? What your answer would be?
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, yeah.
Definition.
Yeah. As per this definition, yes, I cannot. Right, absolutely. Yeah.
You cannot. Okay. But if I ask you the question, can you think about the existence of Allah? That's a different question, because you did not think of Allah. You thought you can prove the existence of something that they do. So that's two different questions. Okay. So I want to be very, very precise. If the reality you cannot sense, you will not be able to think about. That's why when we say about the sifat of Allah, the names of Allah, they're all transmitted to us through the Quran. We did not think about Allah being Rahman and Rahim and merciful and Jabbar and Mutakabbir. Those we did not think of Allah. We did not
comprehend.
Know this. Yes. We cannot comprehend Allah because He's not a reality that we can sense. He's not a reality we can sense. We prove His existence, but we did not prove Him, and we did not think about Allah. Okay, that is where, like, thinking, when you say, can you think about God? No, I can't. Because if God is a material that I can think about, that's a different scenario. I cannot think. My mind reached the conclusion, okay, that there is a creator, okay, whatever name is, behind this, not because I can sense it. It's because my mind told me that there is something must be behind this. Because I thought about the man, life, and universe. And my thought of man, life, and universe, because these are something I can sense. Other than those, I cannot think about. I thought about man, life, and universe, and I reached the conclusion that there is something behind them. There is a creator. Right? That's simply what it is. I cannot think of Allah. I cannot think of the angels. I cannot think of that. There is no thinking process.
Sheikh.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
So, Ustad, you just before said that the imagination is it's not in reality. So the brother was said previous. He also saying that we cannot think Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, right? We can sense. So it's also be like imagination, right?
Yeah. If I told you, tell me about Allah, if you either have information or you can imagine. But that is, that is not accepted in Aqidah. It's, when we say it's haram. In Islam, it's haram to start doing that, and it can misguide the person. That's why Allah says, don't use guessing, don't use imagination in Aqidah. Don't use that. He said, this is, in the Quran, it says, those who use this, it is really, that's a misguided. Even though lots of people might believe in Allah because they felt Allah. They felt in this, not they rationalize that. Well, that's a different scenario. We can address that, that can be addressed later. Again, yes, people can tell you, I guess that there is Allah. I most probably there is an Allah, or there is a creator, or I can imagine that there is a creator but that's not thinking. Can it be accepted by Allah? Yes, but it's not necessarily correct. That's a very dangerous road to believe through guessing, imagination. You can.
That's emotion,
you can.
Right?
Emotions, yeah, you can. It's doable, but it's not yaqeen, and it's dangerous road, because if you can imagine now something, you can change that imagination.
It's not looking at like an atom and like looking at objects and material and atoms and molecules and deducting that there must be a creator.
Yeah, that is, let me put it this way. When you use the word deducting, I wouldn't say that, okay, that's a scientific thinking, but that's a logical deduction. Later on, I think I'll get Abu Talha to answer those questions, but I don't want to get into another topic now. It is a rational deduction, okay? Let me call it this way. because when you say that, then you look at the atom and so on, and then you detect, yes, there is a rational process that makes that process happen, because there is a different process called logical. There is logical deduction, scientific deduction, there is linguistic deduction. There is quite a few. In Aqidah, we want to use the rational deduction, not the scientific, not the linguistics, not that, okay? And I don't want to get into those different ones. But yes, you need to think about those and then finally reach a conclusion, I mean, not deduction, a conclusion that there is a creator.
Yeah, thank you. I think there was a question in the comment that someone asked about the kids in the class insisting about the, I know it's 9:32, so probably I don't know if we can continue.
Yeah.
But there's a question about kids insisting that animals also think.
That is, okay, I'll, let me put it this way. Animals, they have they see reality, they touch reality, they do that, they have their sensing, right? They do this, and they have a brain. Now the issue is that, does that brain connect or not? And do they have the previous information? That's where you can, like, let me put it this way. Let's put this into the question, and then, like, we get, post it on Dr. Malkawi's this, because this will take time to answer. But in short, I would say no, animals don't think. They can recall. They use their brain for a different activity, which is called recalling. Okay, connection and that is, they would say, the brain that is capable of connecting information connecting the new sensory with the previous information and making a judgment. Animals don't have that. Animals have something called recall sensing. They recall things and they don't make a new judgment. I'm gonna answer it with that way, but I'm not gonna go into explaining it. let it be in a discussion with Dr. Malkawi for now, because we really went over time with this. But I know, I mean, this topic has many things that come with, but it's all important. But I don't want to not give it its own time and right, and hopefully people also have some of other obligations on their hand. Okay, brothers and sisters.
Amazing discussion. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillah.
Barakallah fikum all. Thank you for your patience. And if we made a mistake, please, we apologize. If we confused you guys, just send the questions to Dr. Mohammad, and then we will look into it, and hopefully next time he will pick up and continue the discussion, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah
khair.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.